Next News, breaking news.
$9 billion. That's how much Minnesota taxpayers lost under Tim Walz watch while the Democrats looked the other way. At least that's how much we can count right now. But tonight the walls are closing in on Kamala Harris' former running mate. The Minnesota State House just dropped the hammer, officially moving forward with impeachment proceedings against Governor Tim Walz. And here's where it gets really ugly. When brave whistleblowers tried to expose this massive fraud, they were not thanked. They were not protected. They were smeared as racists and threatened with termination. A 20-year state employee, a lifelong Democrat, now breaking her silence, and what she reveals will make you furious. But let me tell you why this matters to you and every single American watching right now. $9 billion didn't just vanish into thin air. That's your money. That's money that should have gone to veterans, to roads, to schools, to the people who actually needed it. Instead, it was siphoned away through 14 different Medicaid programs while Tim Walz's administration did nothing. When patriotic state employees tried to blow the whistle, the Democrats didn't investigate the fraud. They investigated the whistleblowers. They called them racist, forced them out of their positions. They made them so miserable that one woman sat on her front porch crying because she didn't want her young son to see her break down. This is what happens when Democrats have unchecked power. They protect their own. They cover up corruption, and they destroy anyone who dares to speak the truth. And now every single Democrat on that Rules Committee just voted to block any investigation. You see, they don't want you to know where that $9 billion went. Speaking of protecting American interests and resources, there is breaking news you need to hear about right now, so pay attention. The White House just announced over $30 billion to secure America's critical mineral supply chains, and they named a specific Alaskan project as a key strategic asset for U.S. mineral independence. I've personally been to the Vizsla copper drilling site in Canada myself. I've seen it with my own eyes, and what's happening right now in Alaska is bigger than most people realize. President Trump just unveiled Project Vault, a $12 billion strategic minerals reserve designed to stockpile essential resources and keep America strong. This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking leadership that we need. While Democrats were busy covering up fraud in Minnesota, the Trump administration is building America's future. Now, Vizsla Copper, pay attention, they trade in the U.S., in the United States under VCUFF, and in Canada as VCU.V. That's what's on your screen right now. And check the exclusive briefing. It's only for Next News viewers. It's linked below to see what this could mean for American energy independence. And we thank Vizsla Copper for supporting our work here. Now let's get back to the bombshell that the Democrats do not want you to see. See, this is what makes the story even more explosive. It's not just about Walz anymore. It's about a system that's designed to silence the truth tellers. Now think about this very carefully. The state's own ethics officer called a whistleblower to threaten her job if she testified before legislators. Let that sink in. The person whose job it is to protect ethical conduct was threatening to fire someone for exposing corruption. The commissioner had her involuntarily transferred to get her out of the way. Now we have the actual footage of what these brave Americans face. I'm going to show you what this means and what is happening in Minnesota right now. Gunter Eagleman posting, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz faces impeachment by the State House. He's in serious trouble. The Minnesota State House has officially moved forward with impeachment proceedings against Governor Tim Walz. Listen to this, folks. It couldn't happen to a better guy, because we need to have accountability here. That number, $9 billion, that's what we know about. And we know that J.D. Vance's fraud task force is investigating Minnesota right now.
Conduct. These standards do not require a criminal conviction. They require a right now. Thanks for the opportunity to present House Resolution 6, calling for the impeachment of Governor Tim Walz for failure to faithfully execute the laws of the state of Minnesota, abuse of power, and obstruction of oversight. Under Minnesota Constitution Article 8, Section 1, the governor may be impeached for malfeasance, nonfeasance, or corrupt conduct. These standards do not require a criminal conviction. They require a breach of public trust and a failure to uphold the duties of the office. Additionally, Article 5, Section 3 requires the government to ensure that the laws are faithfully executed. Minnesota statutes governing fraud oversight and fiduciary responsibilities require state leadership to safeguard taxpayer funds. Evidence presented in legislative and congressional investigations show that billions in taxpayer funds were lost through fraud in Minnesota social services programs. Oversight systems failed repeatedly under executive leadership. Federal investigation and lawmakers have estimated up to $9 billion in fraud across multiple programs administered by the state. This represents not a minor administrative lapse, but a systematic breakdown in governance. Central to H.R. 6 is sworn testimony and documented statements from whistleblowers, along with years of OLA reports. According to testimony presented before congressional committees, state employees repeatedly raised concerns about the fraud. Those warnings were ignored or suppressed. Whistleblowers repeatedly were retaliated against after coming forward. State legislative testimony further stated, Walz administration turned a blind eye in the face of countless whistleblower reports. Additional accounts point to employees who attempted to stop the fraud were marginalized or threatened. Oversight mechanisms were weakened instead of strengthened, and these actions meet the definition of abuse of power and obstruction. Nonfeasance in office is the failure to act despite repeated warnings of fraud. Nonfeasance in office. Malfeasance in office.
No.
Allowing continued disbursement of funds after fraud indicators were identified. Abuse of power. Retaliation against the whistleblowers raising lawful concerns and suppression of internal reporting mechanisms. And the failure to faithfully execute the law, which is a breakdown in enforcement of anti-fraud safeguards in a violation of public trust and fiduciary duty. This was not a single incident. It was a pattern. Early warnings date back years. Continued fraud during multiple budget cycles. Escalation despite public exposure and investigations. And one of the largest cases, the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme, alone involved hundreds of millions of dollars in misuse of funds.
Remarkable. While Minnesota grapples with the massive fraud scandal, the Rules Committee shocking move exposing the Democrats' refusal to investigate. Minnesotans lost $9 billion in taxpayer dollars to just 14 Medicaid programs under Walz. Today, every single Democrat in the Rules Committee voted to block an investigation into that fraud.
Chair Long?
No.
Vice Chair Schultz?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hollins?
No.
Representative Allen?
Yes.
Representative Coulter?
No.
Representative Frederick?
No.
Representative Howard?
No.
Representative Jacob?
Jacob, yes.
Representative Jordan?
No.
Representative Cagle?
No.
Representative Nash?
Yes.
You get the point.
Repres-
Every Democrat vote on display, blocking investigation. Our next clip digs into the critical oversight and questions the integrity of those determined to hide the truth. Proof the Democrats support fraud. Enough is enough.
The clerk will take the roll. Chair votes aye.
Mr. Chair, do we get closing statements? Very short.
We're on a roll call vote, Representative Weiner.
Chair Long?
No.
Vice Chair Schultz?
Nope,
Yes.
we're going to the vote. No closing statements for you. Whistleblower retaliation. State employee reveals the smear tactics. The first thing leadership goes to is racism. It's humiliating and it's career killing. Faye Bernstein. This is her testimony.
What actually happened is the messenger gets shot. I became a very unpopular person amongst leadership there. And the retaliation in the smear campaign is strong. I was called everything from incompetent to a favorite is racist. You people who speak about fraud at state agencies, the first thing that leadership goes to is racism. And that is very hard to take. It is humiliating. It is career killing, obviously, who is going to hire someone who is considered racist?
We've seen those tactics play out before. It's the same tired playbook. Now we're going to see how these smear campaigns hit home.
So at some point in that period of time in 2019, there was a poster put up at the agency, and it had 3 names on it. It was one of those posters that was sort of that, if you see something, say something kind of thing. And there was 3 names on the poster that we were to contact if we had concerns about fraud, waste, or abuse. And so I was working with those 3 people. And over the next year, those 3 people really made my life about as miserable as it could be. That was a period where my son was young. He's a teenager now, he's with me. But he was young at that time, and I used to sit on the front step of my house and cry because I didn't want him to see me cry. Because you don't want a young kid to see that.
The heartbreaking reality of life under threat comes to light. Faye Bernstein, when the ethics officer threatens to fire you for speaking to legislators, whistleblower Faye Bernstein shares what happened when she tried to report it.
Okay, let me just talk about those 3 names. One is our ethics officer in the agency I work at. She called me to tell me that if I spoke in front of the legislative committee, that I would likely be fired. So that's our ethics officer. Then our, at that time, chief compliance officer, now our commissioner, she had me involuntarily transferred to a different position to get me out of where I was. She called me on a Saturday along with our HR representative and told me that when I returned to work the next week that I had a new job. And I said, do I have any choice? And the answer was no, it's this or nothing. And the third person on that list, who was our director of auditing, so he's an auditor, he completely outed me. I reported fraud to him, and what he did is call up the person I was reporting on and said, Faye Bernstein just told me da-da-da-da about you, just completely outed me, which, as you can imagine, led to more of me crying on my front step.
I'm sorry, Ms. Bernstein, I'm sorry this happened to you, and thank you for sharing your story. I hope we pass this resolution so you can provide further information, you and other whistleblowers.
We know how that resolution passed, don't we? There's no accountability. No accountability, she says.
The retaliation continues, the fraud continues, and there is no accountability. There is absolutely no accountability. And what that makes me repeatedly think of is the cartoon with the dead horse on the table, and everyone is walking around thinking, should we get a new saddle? Should we give the horse a new name? Should we train the rider better? And of course, that's not going to solve it. I don't have any sage wisdom. I'm, like I said, an average state employee, but I grew up on a farm and I know a dead horse when I see it.
A dead horse. Quite the metaphor. So here's what the establishment does not want you to understand. It's not incompetence. This is a system. A system where fraud is protected, whistleblowers are destroyed, and accountability does not exist. You heard the brave whistleblower put it perfectly. She said, everyone's walking around a dead horse on a table asking, should we get a new saddle? Give it a new name? The horse is dead, folks. The system is broken by design. Democrats in Minnesota would rather protect Tim Walz than protect $9 billion that we know of your money. They would rather smear patriots as racists than investigate where the money went. But the truth's coming out. Impeachment is moving forward, and the American people, they're watching. So here's my challenge to every patriot watching right now. Share this video with everybody that you know, because the mainstream media, they're not covering the story. They're too busy protecting their Democrat friends. Tim Walz was one heartbeat away from the vice presidency, and now he's facing impeachment for presiding over $9 billion in fraud while his administration smeared whistleblowers as racist. So let me ask you this. Do you believe Democrats should be held accountable for covering up this massive fraud? Yes or no? Drop your answer in the comments right now and tell me why. And since you watched this whole video, this is a special message just for you. Text raw feed to 844-840-4963. That's how we maintain our direct line of communication. No fraudulent algorithms or fraudulent notifications will block that. This is a direct line of truth between me and you. Text raw feed to 844-840-4963. Don't wait. Do it now. If you want to wear your patriotism proudly, check out the Next News merch shelf below this video. I want to thank you for being a part of the Next News family. We're fighting for truth every single day, while the legacy media covers for the corrupt establishment. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit the notification bell, and remember to stay informed. Stay free.
The system controls information. Information control is power. I don't want you to see this. Truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.